All right, checking. We're live. Yes, we're live. Wow, welcome back to the Bully Line podcast. We are in episode 140. Yep, we're 140 episodes of this podcast been around, and I'm your host, Joseph Landy Pavlon. We're going to talk a lot. I'm going to bring you my thoughts on what happened in yesterday's chaotic, controversial, magnitudinal Saudi Arabian Grand Prix, the penultimate round of this World Championship. I'll break that down in a moment. We'll talk Bathurst, the brain of Chaz Mostert's dominance, bringing his record-breaking car to victory with Lee Holdsworth, and then Formula 2 will have another discussion on its own. We'll talk about the Snowball Derby that happened over this past weekend, yesterday's frantic finish between Chandler Smith and Derek Thorne, and we will always get into this World Championship battle, or just me. This is because it's just me on the podcast. But we apologize. I hope you guys are enjoying your lunch. Taking a break from work or school. It's 2:00 in the afternoon here in Florida. I myself have finals to finish as well. That's why we're doing an afternoon podcast. Sorry for the inconvenience, but you can always check out our episodes after the live stream ends anytime. You can look at past episodes. You can see some of our guests that we've had on before, like Judson O'Neill, who has been interviewing driver after driver, whether they're happy or sad in the Snowball Derby. To play it fair, it was a big weekend, and go ahead and enjoy the conversation in the live chat. But let's start off with the obvious. What happened yesterday at the inaugural Saudi Arabian Grand Prix? It was a highlight on the schedule. A lot of drivers were a bit tight-lipped about it throughout the course of the World Championship for reasons on and off the track. But what happened on the track was just as worth talking about and worth noting and debate. There's a lot to break down from what happened. And to be honest, some things aren't always going to be as just as you want it to be, or, right in your eyes, and that's fine. But one thing's for sure. When we went into this season in 2021, I said it before in previous episodes back in the spring, that this year's World Championship will be something you'll never see, that you might have never seen before. This is what I mean. This is the kind of World Championship we saw in the times at Bahrain, where within a second was like the top six, and multiple constructors were keeping up with Mercedes. I knew right from there, this ain't Lewis Hamilton's season to merry-go-round this World Championship and get his eighth. And if he wanted to get that eighth, he would have to work real hard to do it. And in this position, I think I've never seen, no one's seen Lewis Hamilton in this position in the Mercedes car. Not since McLaren, when Hamilton narrowly beat out Massa in 2008, or narrowly lost in a year like 2012 near the closing rounds. But in terms of Hamilton and Mercedes winning championships, it's usually a one-side show that gets sealed up long before the checkered flag flies at the end of the respective year's World Championship. And that's what makes 2021 so special and unique, and there is nothing quite like it. Lewis Hamilton is fighting hard to make a piece of history on his own, become exclusive to the winningest in the World Championships. Let's break down this Grand Prix, though. So Lewis Hamilton, he had the best car, but he had the car that was good enough to get the fastest lap, which is one more point, that put him right up there, even with Max Verstappen on the board, going into this final race. I'll talk about that in a moment. But pole position for the 103rd time in his career, and his 103rd career win. That's his 8th of the season. Now, mind you, Max outweighs Lewis Hamilton in terms of race wins this year. Max Verstappen with 9, Lewis Hamilton with now 8. But again, it shows you how evenly matched they are in the course of a 22 race World Championship across several different tracks, some new, some returning. And for the most part, I just had that feeling that Max Verstappen was going to take advantage of the increasing performance of Red Bull's equipment. Max Verstappen, though, led 31 laps. He had a good car that was possibly capable of winning the race. We'll break this down for a second here. He started third, could have started in the back should they have chosen to do the gearbox change. And Christian Horner, the guys at Red Bull, said, no, we're keeping our gearbox. We're going to repair it and get it ready for the race. And it was a risk that was taken successfully, to say the least. Verstappen, one podium away from his 60th, and his 60th career podium next week might just be the biggest of his career. We'll see about that come Sunday. Third place, Valtteri Bottas is the first driver to deliver double points for any team in this race, which, of course, Mercedes gets first and third. Huge in the World Constructors' Championship. That puts Mercedes 28 points over Red Bull Racing as we speak. Esteban Ocon in fourth actually led a lap. He was the only driver outside of Hamilton and Verstappen to lead in this Grand Prix. Started ninth and was just shy of getting a podium. Valtteri Bottas eked him out just as they crossed the start-finish line. Very interesting. It kind of brings me back to Azerbaijan in 2017 when the battle for second was between Lance Stroll and Williams, and Valtteri Bottas, who drove that car, ironically, the year before, was not in his first year in Mercedes and beat him out on the front stretch like that. Fifth place, Daniel Ricciardo. He needed this run, but it looks like the McLaren bid to get third in the World Constructors' Championship is all but out of reach for now. Sixth place, Pierre Gasly. He started sixth there too. He had a very solid run. Charles Leclerc, Carlos Sainz Jr. doing what they've done best for Ferrari, giving them double points. Seventh and eighth, another double points finish for Ferrari in the course of the latter half of this year's season. That's exactly what Ferrari needs to do to seal third in the World Constructors' Championship over McLaren. Ninth place, a nice solid run for Antonio Giovinazzi, who started 10th, giving 2 points to Alfa Romeo. And Lando Norris somehow, some way, finds his way back into the points. 1 point is still a point. McLaren double points, but I think it's unfortunately too little too late in terms of getting that third place spot in the World Constructors' Championship. But that's the consistency you want to see out of a driver like Lando Norris. And his first win may not be this year. I did predict it to be this year, or at least the McLaren driver. More likely it ended up being Ricciardo, but Lando Norris has definitely paved his way for a possible successful 2022 season. So those are your points finishers. We're going to talk about the race after I go through the results, and then and break down and tell you my opinion on what the right decisions were made, what the FIA did wrong. But let's talk about the guys that came shy of the points. And once again, these two Canadians just, for some reason in this fall, have a hard time getting into the top 10. Lance Stroll, 11th. He started 18th. No points for Aston Martin. And 12th place, Nicholas Latifi, carrying a lot of grief on his shoulders as his entire Williams team has in their first race since learning the news of the passing of the patriarch of this powerhouse team, longtime decorated Formula One constructor, Sir Frank Williams, who was 79 years old. There were great tributes in his honor prior to the start of the race, and it really warmed my heart. 13th place, Fernando Alonso, started there too. Just didn't have the best car, in comparison to what we saw at Qatar. Obviously, that was like apples and oranges here. 14th, Yuki Tsunoda started 8th. Just car didn't translate in the race, and 14th place it is for Tsunoda. And Kimi Räikkönen, he had an eventful race yesterday, but finished 15th in his second to last race as perhaps one of the greatest Formula One drivers ever in the 21st century. Räikkönen started 12th, and that's, by the way, that was your last driver to finish the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix. We had a lot of retirements. In fact, all but two retirements took place on lap 14. Let's talk about Sebastian Vettel's retirement. Lap 44, he had undrivable damage. Completed 44 of the 50 laps. George Russell, Sergio Perez, and Nikita Mazepin all were involved in the lap 14 crash that actually prompted the second red flag, the second stoppage to the race. The race had two stoppages. Russell, Perez, and Mazepin were involved in pretty much a chain reaction crash after the second race began with a standing start. The cars just could not get through the narrow corner. And Sergio Perez was probably the biggest victim of it, due in part to Red Bull Racing's bid for the Constructors' Championship. It's not officially out of reach, but it was very unfavorable because Perez is so consistent at getting the points for Red Bull that, just being unlucky in these inevitable situations sometimes, it just could not happen at a worse time of the year. Looking at how Sergio does on these street circuits. And so, yeah, that was a bitter pill to swallow. And Nikita Mazepin, it's been an unfortunate season for him. He took a big hit in that crash running over George Russell. George Russell trying to find a way to get some points for Williams at least one more time before his departure to Mercedes. And that means, that means a lot. It would have meant a lot if George had a good shot at getting points, and maybe if he can find a way to do it at Abu Dhabi, that would be a very memorable send-off to his 3 seasons with Williams. And last but not least, Mick Schumacher. Schumacher, of course, being taken out or being caught up in an unfortunate crash by himself and a very hard hit in turn 1. Now, that crash did prompt the first red flag. We had issues with the barriers. This track actually was just about 3 days shy, 3 days after being finished of completion. Obviously, a street circuit, takes a while to be put together and taken apart, and you don't have too much time, based off your respective municipality or government. Your local government will tell you, hey, you have between X date and Y date to get this track put together and removed. And usually those requirements are written in contract. And obviously the Jeddah Street Circuit is very new, and they had a lot of time putting the track together, but at the same time, it was a very tardy finish to the construction. So no one could really get their feet wet on this track until it was just fresh from being complete. And I think we saw the effects of that in the barriers being broken in almost every crash. And I'm not saying that, barriers should be impossible to break. I mean, the world's not perfect, but at the same time, take a look at the crashes that we've seen from Azerbaijan. That's not a new track at all. Singapore might be a better example because it's been around for about 14 years. Singapore, those barriers hardly ever break. And here in this case, the barriers just were very sensitive. And also there was a question upon safety. Was this track safe? I'm not 100% sure to say it was. I mean, just look at the F2 race. Look at what happened at the start of the feature. I mean, 2 drivers had to be airlifted out into a local hospital. And of course, we wish all the best to Enzo Fittipaldi and Teo Porcher. Last news update on those 2 drivers, that they are awake and alert and interacting on social media, which is a great sight to see. But in terms of what we saw on Sunday, I think we could take away from what happened here. And these street circuits are sensitive to cars. And not just that, but this track in particular was too dependent on the throttle. I'm going to be 100% honest about the Jeddah Street Circuit. And it's not like you can use, like the FIA can use a year to reassess the track and put it, together for the next fall. No, they're having round 2 of the next of the 2022 World Championship at Saudi Arabia, which is actually about 4 months from now, not too far. Which in my opinion, I have to say, how did I feel as a fan watching my drivers, watching cars going through the S's, those narrow S's where you have to depend on the throttle to put it down a good lap time, where you could get a good lap time in Q1 by chance, should any car not get in your way by chance. I didn't like it. I'm going to be 100%. This was a recipe for disaster. We were going to get someone hurt. We already got 2 drivers hurt, and they're laying in the hospital bed at a local medical facility that had to be airlifted out. And I know that was a start crash. People are going to say, yes, that happens everywhere else, but it can happen at any track. True, but this track was too narrow. It's too dependent on the throttle, and you don't have to look far in the paddock to find teams that are happy just because the race is over and they can move on to, a more traditional closed circuit. And I'm not saying that by thinking that all street circuits suck. No, they don't. Street circuits are great, but you have to get them right. And I feel like the FIA missed on that part. They knew this was a big financial opportunity to come race in Saudi Arabia. I'm sure the people over there, like the city officials, were more than happy to provide Formula One with the streets that they have to put a track together. But in the end, those who drive the cars are the drivers, and we have to put their concerns up front. Hearing drivers like Sergio Perez and Carlos Sainz before the racing, questioning the validity of the circuit's structure, that's a bit worrisome. And I have to say, because I'm glad that we didn't get to that we didn't have to worry about cars getting airborne, cars running over each other. I mean, I had a little glimpse of what could have happened, and what very easily should have happened in some of these wrecks when Nikita Mazepin ran over George Russell, having nowhere to go. There was no place to avoid a crash like we saw that brought out the second red flag. And not to mention, the places to overtake here, they're few and far between. Heavy braking corners, such as turn 1 and then turns like 21 and 22. As much as you have an opportunity to overtake, you have to rely on DRS. And that's my next point. We have too much dependency on aero at a track like Jeddah. I mean, not even Baku had that much of an issue when it came down to aero dependency. The need to push the DRS when you're second behind. Listen, either you overtook with the DRS being enabled at those specific points of the track, or you didn't have the opportunity to overtake at all and had to overtake by luck. And I'm not even getting into the whole Verstappen Hamilton brigade. That's another situation. I'm not there yet. What I have to say is I think we're normalizing too much of the aero dependencies in these cars. I get that they're monstrosities in terms of the aerodynamics and how sensitive they are and how the downforce just comes into play in these machines, but we're still at a street circuit, and the narrowness of these tracks made it difficult to overtake and do it legally. That's why we saw the amount of time penalties that we saw in Formula 2, or especially in the sprint races. Just go ask down to Ruvla. But one thing I'll have to say before I get into the Hamilton Verstappen situation is that there was a lack of runoff areas. You could have a lockup, even in Monaco, which is probably the narrowest street circuit out there. You could have a lockup and find your way to slow down or slow before hitting a barrier. Here, best of luck to you. That's not right. I'm sorry, but Jean Todt, Michael Massey, the guys at the FIA have to be onto this before someone gets badly hurt. And yeah, you got two drivers, like I said, two drivers from the Formula 2 scene right now in a hospital bed being treated over a start crash. Now, I get it's a start crash. Everyone's going to put an asterisk to it. But still, the point I'm trying to make is that we don't need drivers getting hurt over avoidable situations. Narrow corners, throttle dependency, too much dependency on the aero, little to no runoff areas. Mick Schumacher's car could have very well ricocheted back onto the racing surface and collected more cars and made the crash work out of his control, by the way. And it, like I said, if the FIA want to get onto this, they don't have that much time. Round 2 is Saudi Arabia next year. Now, this is the point. I know we've gone 20 minutes into the podcast. You've probably heard about 5 to 10 minutes of me ranting about the track. One more thing before we go into the Hamilton Verstappen thing. You say what you want about political. Your political views. I have mine. You have yours. Everybody is entitled to their own opinion and belief, as well as their own ideology. But one thing's for sure. Seeing veterans, longtime rivals like Sebastian Vettel and Lewis Hamilton at the front of the grid during pre-race ceremonies, both take a knee together for solidarity, for change, to create global change and improvements to society in Saudi Arabia. That warmed my heart. Now, I'm not going to go too far into it because obviously we all know the reasons why, and that's pretty much why most of the drivers were tight-lipped about this place for the duration of the year. But it was just something that, like, you know, even a few years ago, like, or decades ago, they would have been never. It was just like, even bringing F1 here was like never going to be a scene. And if motorsports is what's great to create change, like, you know, the FIA has been pushing, then so be it. You know, that's all I'm going to say. Now let's talk about the brunt of the conversations. I know if for you guys that have been sticking on to this podcast for a long time, I commend you. But here's where I need to be real. And this is where people are going to say, but it would have been different had Lewis Hamilton done it. Or people are going to say, Max got away with murder. You could literally Lewis Hamilton. Everyone's going to go refer to the Silver Sun race. So don't even come with that opinion. Actually formate your own opinion and, you know, and validate it enough to where you believe it's honest before you go spewing out an angry tweet. Can't fix Twitter and can't fix anybody on that app. But point I'm saying is that Max Verstappen was under pressure from the very beginning of this Grand Prix. He had the pole time, undoubtedly. Sector 1, flawless. Sector 2, even better. Around turns 22 to 23, I believe. I don't even remember how many turns this damn track has. Nearing the end of Sector 3, about to finish his inevitable pole lap that would have enhanced Max Verstappen's World Championship hopes of clinching it. He narrowly skims the barrier at corner exit and lost control and essentially crashed in Q3. And if that's not enough of a psychological punch in the gut, then I don't know what is. He was perfect in these street circuits this year. Undoubtedly, in fact, he's statistically the best driver in street courses all year long. This, you know, I thought, and everyone thought, of course, at the, you know, the heat of the moment, it's over. Hamilton's won it. That's it. That's what happened. Needed to happen to Max. Had to throw it away himself. He did something wrong. He screwed up. He choked. No, he didn't. Anybody, no matter what level of skill you have behind the wheel of a car, of a single-seater car, would have had that same chance of making a mistake. Could have happened to Hamilton. Could have happened to Bottas. Could have happened to anybody. Go back decades ago. A mistake like that could have happened to Schumacher. It's happened to Senna. And the common denominator is that you're under pressure. The driver's under pressure. This has never been the pressure. Max Verstappen's never been under this much pressure before. Because, Red Bull hasn't really given the best equipment out in the last few years, or during the time that he's been with Red Bull. It's usually like a B plus level equipment in relation to Mercedes being like the only A plus equipment during the turbo hybrid era, that is. So usually you get 1 or 2 races out of the year that Max Verstappen has the best car out there. And you know what? It happened. So what? He made a mistake. He didn't do anything wrong. But he still at least retained third. Christian Horner made a great decision to repair the gearbox and not ditch it for a new one and risk the grid position. Everyone referred to Charles Leclerc on Twitter about it. No. What happened with Leclerc at Monaco was a more severe impact in the front of Leclerc's car, which damaged the gearbox so much so that when they put him out in the morning warm-ups for the Monaco Grand Prix the following day, the car failed and limped, pretty much coasted back to the pits, and Leclerc never raced at all. That was nowhere near the case of what happened to Verstappen's car at Q3 on Saudi Arabian qualifying Saturday. So just keep that in mind. But it was enough to create some mental damage for sure. Psychological damage. I mean, this is sports psychology 101. I had an A in psychology in college, so like I know it's 2 years old, but like I remember these key terms. And listen, in the brain you have a thing that gets released called dopamine, and too much dopamine can usually be bad for you as much as it could be good for you. And too little dopamine can usually be as bad for you as it would be good for you. It depends who you are. And listen, I'm no expert here. This isn't Dr. Phil or Dr. Joe. No, this is the Below the Yellow Line podcast. I'm here to talk motorsports. But it's the obvious I'm trying to state here was that during this Grand Prix, Max Verstappen was overly aggressive, way over the top aggressive. Like, I've never seen him this aggressive before, like, in terms of this year. Maybe outside of Brazil than what we saw from him yesterday. Let's take, for example, the first restart, or not the restart of the second race after the first red flag. Standing start, Lewis Hamilton has the preferred line. Of course, turn 1 being the chicane it is. Usually it's a 1-groove racetrack, and you better keep your car on the left side of those sausage curbs or risk a time penalty or maybe having to give your position back because you can't get an advantage off the track. And I knew this was going to be a risk or a possibility when Max Verstappen. This is what I was scared for him in that restart because he could have very well crashed Hamilton and or himself and throw it away. I mean, this is like Schumacher stuff. Jeez. Or B, suffer a time penalty likewise to what we saw with Sebastian Vettel in the Canadian Grand Prix in 2019. As a Vettel fan, I'm still very upset about it. Go watch what happened there to understand what I mean. Or C, surrender to Lewis Hamilton and let him pull away. Now, obviously, you had 3 options. A, risk repeating Monza all over again, the Italian Grand Prix incident. Remember that happened there in turn 1? I think Michael Massey's over the top in terms of officiating. And I know he was trying to send the message out to both Christian Horner and Toto Wolff from Mercedes to please do your best to not have to make us intervene from the stewards. The last thing the stewards want to do is the thing they have to do. Intervene, make calls, settle the score off the track. nobody likes to see scores settle off the track, um, especially in terms of a world championship. And now, to be honest, when I was watching Max yesterday on TV, I kind of I got like in my mind I was thinking, oh, we've seen this with Schumacher, we've seen this before, we've seen this with Prost and Senna, we've seen this with Rosberg and Hamilton. Yes, these things happen. You're going to get contact even in single seater racing. I know. I'm sorry to break it to you, but sometimes it might be on the wrong side of your stick, which, I mean, ask any Verstappen fan from July's British Grand Prix, they'll agree on that one. But you have to follow the rules. And it was Max wrong to attempt the overtake and basically claim his spot, his territory in turn one? No, he wasn't wrong. I'm giving you my verdict. Judge Joseph says Max wasn't wrong on the first restart maneuver. But what he was wrong at was attempting to complete the corner, risking Lewis Hamilton's chances in his race. Now, your car cannot be your elbows pushing people out. If that's what you want to do in a race car, come to America and race in NASCAR. I'm just being 100. I don't care who you are. Not trying to put one driver over the other here. If you want to drive like that, there are thousands of short tracks that are happy to have you participate in their Saturday night races where you can push people out of the way. But this is Formula One. And I know that everyone's going to go back and say, well, Schumacher did it, and he's a 7-time world champion because... Yeah, but, he still pushed drivers over the edge. He still pushed Damon Hill over the edge, 94. I mean, people still talk about what happened over 27 years ago in Adelaide. Clearly, that didn't look accidental if you look at it multiple times. And then, of course, who could forget what happened in 1997 in Jerez in the European Grand Prix that closed the season? In fact, it was so bad, the FIA literally disqualified Lewis Hamilton's classification in the final standings to prove a point. Dirty driving is everywhere. It's universal, and it's not favorable, especially in this kind of racing. And was it worth the penalty? Was Verstappen's move worth the penalty? And I had to watch it over and over again. I'm going to be honest, I don't think it was. It would not have been worth the penalty if A, Verstappen didn't try to fend off Hamilton at the exit of the corner. B, cut through, give his position back or attempt to do it, get the time back. And C, own up to it and not try to point fingers at Toto Wolff and the FIA, which I know Toto's the other way around. He does it all the time. But it's that kind of, those kind of interim politics in the garage area. I think it's a bit unnecessary. I'm going to be 100% with you guys. But this is what we have. So just enjoy it. That's what I think based off the first restart. Here, and this is what bothered me. This is also something else that bothered me. So of course, just after that maneuver was made, Ocon rolls up to second. He's just trying to be as under the radar as possible and still run his own race, which he did successfully. I commend him for that. But then, of course, the crash with Perez and the red flag, bringing everyone back to the pits. What I didn't like, and this is what doesn't sit well with me, was that the FIA and the radio communication between Red Bull and the FIA stewards sounded more like a court hearing. I kid you not. It almost felt like we were hearing, don't get mad at me, the trial in Wisconsin. It was like they were kind of talking, negotiating what a verdict would be. Last time I checked, the verdict's supposed to be given to you, and it's not supposed to be negotiated. I don't know how that came to light. I mean, listen, you could appeal assessed not verdicts, but like assessed penalties, assessed decisions like that were already given to you. But why on earth is Michael Massey going to Christian Horner, Toto Wolff, and saying, how should we give this penalty out? I don't know. I'd rather not have to, cover the situations. I'm just going to be real. Aiden Millward, a very, very good YouTuber. Subscribe to his channel, by the way. He posts videos every day from over the pond in UK. Great guy. He said it felt like WWE. Those were his words. Now, don't shoot the messenger, but that if we're bringing comparisons to WWE, then something's a bit wrong. And of course, if we cover NASCAR religiously, you hear us talk about the NASCAR, the shortcomings of NASCAR, like the playoffs and stage racing and all that. But these half calls, negotiable calls, ghost calls of penalties from the stewards. I hope this does not become normalized. Just of course, I'm not the FIA here. I'm not the FIA president. I'm not John Todd. I'm not the director, Michael Massey. I'm not there. I'm from home covering what's happening on my TV. College kid from Boca. This is essentially should be handled confidentially between the team personnel and the FIA. It should not be done over the radio like a person in a car dealership negotiating the price of their car. That, to me, felt a bit flawed. Why are we supposed to offer, would you like Max to drop 2 spots and not get a time penalty? Come on, you're responsible. Give a sturdy call. Let us get mad over it. And then that's another thing too. Can't make everybody happy. That this isn't La La Land. This is the real world. This is Formula One right here. A world championship on the line. Whatever calls are going to be made will come with a big cost, possibly a big potential effect in this world championship. And I'm sure these stewards know it. But I didn't know we were, just, offering like little goodie wrappers of, soft penalties versus harsher penalties. Which one would you like to take? What is this? Card games? Are we like, touch this card and see what it has? Come on. Get to the point. Assess the penalties. Let everybody cry, whine, and moan over social media about it, and move on. And I don't know what they were doing under the red flag, but it's not something to be proud of as a Formula One fan. If I were to show this to people that are new to F1, is that supposed to be the goal, especially this year, because you got more eyes watching F1 more than ever in the last several years because of this World Championship. So can we please present a nice, honest picture of what pure racing should look like? And Max is not wrong when he said in one of his post-race interviews, I forgot who asked him this question, but he said, this is not the Formula One I grew up racing and watching, essentially. Of course, referring to his dad, Jos Verstappen, about 20-some years ago. Anyways, so that was the first big mark that everyone's, keeping tabs on. Secondly, so the second restart happens. And so Hamilton, Verstappen takes the 2-place loss of position that the FIA negotiated for him or offered to Christian Horner and Red Bull. The second restart happens. This time it's a rolling start. A decision I will applaud the FIA, and we didn't need another standing start because we know what the side effects of that can look like, and they are not pretty. So we have Ocon in front, and Verstappen basically overtakes Hamilton, and I think he pushes Hamilton wide. And, of course, turn one, you got to pretty much have one car through there or you're going over the sausage curbs are crashing. And that's what happened. So then now Max is in trouble again and was pretty much being offered, to give the position back to Lewis Hamilton after X amount of laps go by. Hamilton, Verstappen is in the lead. Ocon rolls back to third. Hamilton in second in DRS range. And basically, I guess Max was told by one of the crew members to just roll off, give the position back, or let Lewis Hamilton go by in the DRS zone, and all will be well, right? Nope. Can't have nice things now. He literally probably driving with, a lot in his head, under pressure, overreacts to the radio message and veers left. I don't know if he's trying to pull left to let Hamilton through or whatnot. But Hamilton runs over Verstappen. Obviously, of course, misjudgment. Like I said, this track is throttle dependent. What else can these guys do if the stewards are telling you, hey, you let Lewis by, give your position back kind of thing, or give up your time? You can't really do that when the flow of the track depends on how much throttle you're putting in, through these narrow corners and straightaways. It was bound to happen, and luckily, and of course, it happened by chance. I don't like when these things happen by chance, but we got away with a catastrophe between Hamilton and Verstappen happening again this year. And Hamilton basically skimmed the rear of Verstappen's car, creating just small, minute damage on the clip of his front wing. That could have easily been another case of Marcus Ericsson riding over the top of a car, like we saw in the IndyCar Grand Prix of Nashville. I'm just saying. Honestly, I think that little hiccup was actually what saved F1 from itself. And I'll get into that in a bit. And then I guess after the race, they gave a 5-second time penalty for Max Verstappen on basically his two moves, even with telling Verstappen to give his position back. I mean, Max drove like a maniac. Let's not be excited here. I called him Max Schumacher on the Skype call with my friend the other day. And listen, he really did remind me of Schumacher's antics. But I think the FIA is too harsh. They're too concrete. I think we got to take the hands and rise them a little bit higher from the handles of the drivers and teams. Let them self-police a little more. And I know that's a term that usually hockey fans hear when they talk about, how much, hockey fights have been regulated by the referees these days and how they can't take off their helmets and all that stuff and really pull jerseys over like they used to. That's what I mean, self-policing. But sometimes self-policing comes with unintended consequences. Ask any NASCAR fan from the early 2010s, and they'll explain it all to you. Carl Edwards, Brad Keselowski, Jeff Gordon, Clint Boyer, Matt Kenseth, Joey Logano. The several incidents I cannot count from Kyle Busch, Kevin Harvick. Basically that. That's not what F1 needs. It's going to give everyone a bad look. And especially for a season like this, you want to have a consistent basis on the calls that are made. And I think the FIA took a step too further. No, there wasn't bias. I don't think there's any bias here. I don't care what you guys see on Facebook, Twitter. Your friend on Discord's not going to be the right source to form an opinion. You have to actually go look at it yourself. This is what it's come down to. So after the race ends, Verstappen, of course, given the 5-second time penalty, he was probably over 22 seconds ahead of the third place car, which ended up being Valtteri Bottas by an inch over Ocon. 5 seconds a time penalty, and then of course, hours after the race, because the FIA has to be like this. Breaking news: Max Verstappen given 10-second time penalty for movers. He still keeps second place, but I think that extraterrestrial 10-second time penalty that was given to him after the race, no, it wasn't necessary because he already had the 5-second time penalty, so that's why Verstappen pretty much surrendered the lead, knowing that with the gap should he have won, it would not have been enough ever over Hamilton. But also to A and B save his points. Here's the issue is that the FIA gave that penalty out, in my humble opinion, to send a message to those two drivers, Max Verstappen and Lewis Hamilton. I think it spirals back to Brazil, because that was like the first dosage of incidents. I'm going to compare it to the vaccine. First dose of incidents. The situation between Verstappen and Hamilton at Brazil. The FIA, everybody, Toto Wolff giving the angry, giving like an updated version of the angry woman screaming at a cat meme. That was what happened to Brazil. Qatar was pretty lackluster, to say the least. And then this race was like the Brazil situation times like 3, 4, 5. I could no longer count. So my humble opinion, that final penalty that was given hours after the checkered flag that, didn't matter to Max, he still finished second. That 10-second time penalty was just a message sent to everyone involved in this World Championship. Drivers and or constructors, because that's not done yet either. Mess around and find out. That's what I think. You want to pull this? You want to pull Saudi in Abu Dhabi? This is what's going to happen to you. And I think that's what the team principals are going to have to work with for the time being. Now, 47 plus minutes over this one race shows you how dramatic this Grand Prix was on itself. Let's take a look at the World Championship standings with 22 races down and one race to go. Who is where? Max Verstappen and Lewis Hamilton, like I said, they're tied. Verstappen and Hamilton at 369.5 on the points. That's essentially a tie. And 1 second. With Hamilton and Verstappen tied, that literally means it can go the obvious way. Highest finisher wins the World Championship. If, God forbid, Max Verstappen and Lewis Hamilton have Italy happen all over again, where they collide and both retire from the race and score no points each outside the top 10, or just for some odd reason they both don't have points at the checkered flag and they're running. The World Championship count back for the tiebreaker will be based off wins. Most wins in the season. Max Verstappen leads with 9 wins. Lewis Hamilton is 8 wins in this year. The tiebreaker would go to Max Verstappen should they, heaven forbid, collide and have, have that kind of moment, in the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix and both retire. It would be Max Verstappen. We've seen close championship battles before. But this, in terms of modern day Formula One, in terms of the turbo hybrid era and how Mercedes have been nearly unstoppable for the most part since this era began in 2014. In terms of a driver outside of Mercedes getting this far and Red Bull having to wait so long and take several years to just put the pieces back together from the Vettel dynasty. Here we finally are. Max Verstappen has his chance to become the world championship, the first ever Dutch world champion. He was already the greatest Dutch driver, let alone becoming the first ever to win a Grand Prix since 1952. We had several Dutch drivers grace the F1 grid, but none have done half of anything where Max has been. And it's amazing to see how far he's come. He's only 24, but he's been in F1 for about 7 years. Yeah, remember, he started at 17. Broke records on being the youngest to do this, to do that, to win a race. I could go on and on. Yeah. So that's why he's still 24 years old, despite being 7+ years in the highest level of racing. And of course, Lewis Hamilton. Lewis Hamilton being, statistically speaking, the greatest driver ever in terms of the Formula One World Championship across several eras. I mean, he was a multi-generation talent. It still is. Lewis Hamilton, age 36. Honestly, he could keep on going like this and still be at top stride. Most drivers will never come close to reaching the peak that Lewis Hamilton did, just based off performance, regardless of the equipment you're in. Lewis Hamilton this year reminds me a lot of Fernando Alonso in 2006 in a way, but that's for another discussion. Hamilton can break Michael Schumacher's record that he sits tied with. It's 7 world championships, become the first ever 8-time world driving champion. For a long time, and even during my time as an F1 fan, and even when Mercedes had Lewis Hamilton's dominance at the dawn of his dominating years with Mercedes, that the records that Hamilton reached and surpassed would be out of reach. Senna's pole record, he got that. The win count, remember, 91 wins. Michael Schumacher, it looked like that was going to be unreachable. Not only did Lewis Hamilton win 91, but he surpassed 100. He's at 103. Pole positions, he actually surpassed that. Fun fact, he has the same amount of poles as wins in his career, 103 each. And it's just amazing. You love him or hate him, you got to respect Lewis Hamilton's skill behind the wheel. And everyone's saying, well, yeah, he's driving the best equipment out there. But no, he's in Mercedes, but yeah, you're in Mercedes, but you still have to work just as hard. You have to be at your best no matter where you're at. And Formula One, 181 podiums. If he races for maybe like even just 2 more years, he could get to 200 podiums. Maybe surpass that too. I need some water. But I'm looking at the numbers here. People seem to forget what happened in Hamilton's time with McLaren. And that's just as impressive as his time with Mercedes has been. I think, it's just like a shadow being cast over. With 4 races as a rookie, being 1 point of a championship as a rookie, world champion as a rookie in 2007. In 2008, basically by a hair length winning that championship. 2009, he's never had a season finished worse than 5th in his 15-year career. If that's not impressive, I don't know what is. And not taking any credit away from Michael Schumacher here, but not even Schumacher could get to those levels. And Lewis Hamilton, not to mention, he's one of the most influential personalities in sports, not just Formula One, not just racing. I mean, those are big deals enough, but sport as a whole. He's the face of British athletes. It has been the face since really his time entering the sport. He's a cultural icon. There's nobody like him. And Lewis Hamilton has a chance to statistically become the greatest world champion of all time, winning his 8th. An unprecedented history that repeated itself last year, getting the 7th. And just didn't feel like even Lewis, I never really thought he would have gotten to 7. Maybe going back to like 2017 or 18, I didn't think that 7 was on the table. But you still have to put the pieces right from start to finish to get a world championship. As for Mercedes, let's talk about the constructor for a moment. This era has been defined by Mercedes. In the turbo hybrid era that has dawned in 2014, Lewis Hamilton has won all but one championship in this era. In fact, this era comes to an end with the new car configurations coming out starting next year, and he could pretty much, seal it up and make Mercedes the greatest constructor for a driver in this era. And Mercedes could go win their 8th straight World Constructors Championship. All 8 have been consecutive. It's unbelievable how dominant they have been, but no one has put Lewis Hamilton nor Mercedes in this kind of test in this era until this year. And that's what makes 2021 so important for motorsports as a whole, for Formula One in the history of this sport. This era really will come down to Sunday's race in Abu Dhabi. And the checkered flag is all what separates both drivers from a world championship. I mean, it's that close. It's taken 21 races, and they're still level on the points board. In fact, the last time that happened, where 2 drivers were literally even in the World Drivers' Championship before the finale, was in 1974, when Emerson Fittipaldi and Clay Regazzoni went into the United States Grand Prix in 1974. That was in Watkins Glen. And Brazilian pulled through to win the World Championship. I mean, it's rare. It's rare. We've seen championships end in single-digit points, like from numbers 1 to 5, ties and all that stuff, but never like this, especially in this era with the odds against Verstappen, despite the improvements in the Red Bull car. I knew from the start of this year that was possible. It was more than possible. And this World Championship could have even gone the other way. We could have been here talking about Verstappen's first ever World Championship today. Hamilton had to fight to stay in it, and thus he did. He's been driving like it's been 08, 07, 08. And that's like kind of Lewis Hamilton. Listen, his future in Formula One, whether you want to admit it or not, those years are kind of getting numbered. And we don't know if he'll be around in 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 plus years. This might be, the 2020s might be the final chapter. The final chapters in the book of Lewis Hamilton's dominance. And that's where I pay my respects to Lewis Hamilton. Sir Lewis. Just, there'll never ever be another driver like him. And if he wins his 8th World Championship, it will cement a career of the ages to the highest of high degrees. Numbers that Schumacher, and how great Schumacher, guys like Schumacher, Stewart, Clark, Fittipaldi, Senna, Prost, they could never even get close to that. And maybe with the exception of Schumacher. We may never see a driver like Lewis Hamilton or come close to the dominance that Hamilton has put in his F1 career in the long future. I mean, this is a special moment in time. So cherish it. This year's Abu Dhabi Grand Prix, the final race of the 2021 Formula One World Championship, will be probably one of the most special races. It's going to be a race of the ages. By the way, it's 8 o'clock a.m. Eastern time. So best believe you get your alarms ready. I have mine stacked long before we even hit the weekend. It's a big deal. Every session is going to matter to the fullest, and when those lights go off, I swear we're going to see something we've never seen before. And fun fact, we have not seen the championship be determined in the final race in Formula One since 2016. Yes, when I was a senior in high school, it's been that long. And it was, of course, between Nico Rosberg, Mercedes, and Hamilton, Mercedes, the two drivers, pretty much doing like a modern version of Prost and Senna. And of course, we saw how Rosberg defied Lewis Hamilton and won that world championship. And of course, eventually retiring a few days later. That was special on its own. And now we get to see with another team. Another team has finally come to the rise and is taking on Lewis Hamilton and Mercedes. I think Red Bull Racing, Honda, they were ready for this. Christian Horner was ready. Helmut Marko was ready. And Max Verstappen was ready. And even Sergio Perez, he's got a role to play too. There's a World Constructors Championship here. And by the way, Red Bull Racing, Honda, they clinched, they had all their 4 constructors titles in a row during during Vettel's dynasty. 2010, 11, 12, and 13, all 4 in a row. So they have a chance to get their 5th there. And their 5th World Drivers' Championship as well. All right, let's talk about the World Drivers' Championship that we have. Of course, there's still more than 2 drivers to talk about here. Let me get another swig before we go into this. Valtteri Bottas looks pretty much, I think he's got 3rd place, a handful of points ahead of him to clinch 3rd place. But I think it's going to be his now. 218 points, 190 points for Sergio Perez. And 4th, he's got 4th place clinch. He can't get any worse than 4th at this point. Charles Leclerc, Lando Norris, Carlos Sainz Jr., they're going to be in a battle, a 3-way battle for 5th place honors in the Drivers' Championship. 158 on the points board for Leclerc, 154 for Norris, and 149.5 for Carlos Sainz Jr., the other Ferrari driver. Danny Ricciardo leaps to 115 on the points board in 8th place. He's 15 points ahead of Pierre Gasly. Gasly has 100 points. And Fernando Alonso is 10th with 77 points, with 1 race to spare. The World Constructors' Championship, like I said before, is going to come down to this final race. 28 points Mercedes AMG F1 hold over Red Bull Racing, Honda. Mercedes thinking their 8th World Constructors Championship, and their 8th in a row. Red Bull Racing Honda is looking for their 5th World Constructors Championship and 1st since 2013, almost 8 years ago. Then there's Ferrari, which looks like they have it all but clinched now for 3rd in the World Constructors Championship, 307.5 for Ferrari. McLaren Mercedes at 269 points. They can't get any lower than 4th. Alpine Renault in 5th with 149 points. They still have to fend off AlphaTauri Honda at 120 points. Aston Martin Mercedes at 77 points. They can't get higher than 7th. I'm afraid to say. Williams Mercedes at 23 points. That's 10 points ahead of Alfa Romeo Racing Ferrari. 13 points in Haas Ferrari are 1 race away from becoming pointless for a full season for the first time in constructor history. So there you have the scoop. By the way, I just want to throw in one more thing before we go on to Formula 2. The last time we had 2 drivers come down to the final race in the World Championship that represented 2 different teams was in 2012, that frantic 2012 World Championship when Sebastian Vettel and Red Bull eked out Fernando Alonso and Ferrari for the 2012 World Championship. I'm just saying, that 2012 season has been referred to a lot this year, but still doesn't have anywhere near the characteristics as that year had. And when I was 14 years old at the time, I was a youngin'. That's how long it's been. This is a once-in-a-lifetime experience for the fans, for the teams, the drivers, everybody. and I cannot wait to see what happens. I'll talk more about my predictions and hypothetical thoughts on the race. We go into the race previews, but we have more racing to talk about. Let's begin with Formula 2. All right, the FIA Formula 2 Championship had the penultimate weekend after 3 months of being off almost since Sochi. They're back. And the penultimate weekend being at the Jeddah circuit. And it was all dominated by drivers from Oceania, literally. We had Kiwis 1-2 with Marcus Armstrong and Liam Lawson in Sprint Race 1. Sprint Race 2 and feature race were won by Oscar Piastri, but he did not clinch the championship. I'll explain why. Marcus Armstrong. So let's talk about Sprint Race 1. Top 8, remember, get points on that end and 2 bonus points for fastest lap. Marcus Armstrong took the win. It was his first ever win in Formula 2. And great run for the Doms driver. Liam Lawson second to his countrymate. High-Tech Grand Prix actually get a double podium with Yuri Vipson third. Filipe Drugovich brings it home fourth. It's been an up and down year for the Brazilian. Robert Schwartzman gets the 2 points, bonus points for fastest lap, finishing fifth. Christian Lundgaard in sixth. Dan Ticktum in seventh, and points leader Oscar Piastri X out the final point in eighth, due in part to Jan Derula's time penalty. Yep, cutting the track. That's what happens. And Sprint Race 2 was in the hands of Oscar Piastri, to the surprise of no one. Oscar Piastri took the win with the fastest lap. Ben Viscal in second for Trident. Third place went to Robert Schwartzman, trying to keep the championship hopes alive. Fourth place went to Dan Ticktum. Ticktum really good on the street circuits for the most part, and he had to get his feet warm before getting a better finish in the second sprint race. Terra Porcher, Jack Doohan, I apologize, in fifth. Terra Porcher sixth. Enzo Fittipaldi seventh, and Guan Yu Zhou rounds out the points for the second sprint race. Now let's talk about the feature race. And it was anything but a feature race, honestly. I mean, first and foremost, only 5 laps were completed. And second of all, I want to, again, send my best wishes to Enzo Fittipaldi and Teo Porcher, as they are both receiving medical attention after a frightening crash on the opening straightaway, where Teo Porcher's car his ARP Grand Prix car was stalled from grid 3 in the sprint, or in the start of the race from the grid, because remember they had to qualify for the feature race. And Enzo Fittipaldi with nowhere to go, like I said, with the narrowness of the track. Say what you want to know. These grid hits can happen anywhere. Enzo Fittipaldi just ran right in the back of him, just nowhere to go, right off the start of the grid. And it's a kind of crash that creates whiplash, head injuries, concussions. You get the point. Even leg injuries to an extent. So the red flag came out. I mean, there was a red flag before the race even started. They had to get the barriers repaired. Like I said, the barriers were sensitive. And with that ugly scene in the rearview mirror after that first crash, they finally got the cars back on track. But remember, the FIA has a rule with a lot of time. You have to finish the race before, the time cap runs out. And they never made it to 75% of the race. So teams were given half points. That's where I'm going to get to next. That's why only 5 laps were completed. We had another red flag that ended the race. That was it. Oscar Piastri got the win, but no, he did not pick up the championship trophy in this race, as he didn't get enough points to create that sufficient gap going into Abu Dhabi. He did get the pole position and the fastest lap. But likewise to what I said, he needed the full points to be awarded in order to have clinched the championship in Saudi Arabia. That did not happen. Robert Schwartzman, though, finished second to his teammate, and that's good enough for Prema Power Team to clinch their third ever championship, for the team's championship in Formula One second tier racing on Saturdays. One from GP2 and two from the modern day FIA Formula 2. Third place, Ralph Boschung and Campos Equipment. Good run for him. Then you and I Vertrosi get the little points with Granujot in fourth, Filipe Drugovich in fifth. Sixth place went to Yuri Vips. Had a nice weekend for himself. Christian Lundgaard in seventh. Marcus Armstrong, eighth. Liam Lawson, ninth. And 10th place went to Dan Ticktum. Remember, the points you received from a normal sprint race was divided by 2, and that's the amount of points you received because of the 75% rule that was not met. And with one weekend to go in FIA Formula 2, like I said, Prema Power Team are the team's champions. Congratulations to them. I think they got back-to-back, because last year with Schumacher and so yeah, the Drivers' Championship, the top 5. Like I said, Oscar Piastri has to gain up to 66 points, or maybe even high, or not even that much anymore, because of 3 races to go. The 2 sprint races, the feature is all that's left. 213.5 points for Piastri. Robert Schwartzman in second with 162 points. Unfortunately, like last year, it's going to be all but his. Unfortunately, it's not going to be his championship to win. It'll go to his teammate, most likely. Granujot in third with 149 points. Dan Ticktum leaps to fourth with the nice stretch he's been having since the feature race at Monza. He's got 139.5 points to his name. And Theo Pourchaire in fifth sits at 124 points, or actually gained to 124 points. 2 retirements and a 6th this weekend. Not good at all. Team's championship, like I said, Prema Power Team clinched the championship a week early. 375.5 points is what they have. Second place goes to Carlin, 235.5 points. Third place, UNI Vertosi Racing, 221 points. Now, they could reach Carlin for second, but it might be far-fetched. Fourth place, High Tech Grand Prix. I think they're in a boat of their own. And Art Grand Prix could mathematically no longer drop beneath fifth in the points with 1 race to spare at 174 points. Yeah, I've been talking a lot. Let's continue on. We'll talk Formula 2 later on in this podcast, but yeah, nice to know they're changing the format back to what it was before this year. I think the feature and sprint were better for the weekend structure than the 2 sprints and a feature. I think makes it easier on everyone. All right, let's talk Bathurst. This is a race of attrition, termination, legacies, a new page of history, page of rewritten history. How about the 2021 Repco Bathurst 1000? This race was a classic. Seems like every Bathurst 1000 comes down to these classics that just stick with generations and generations to come. And 2021 was no different. Going into the weekend, we learned about the new the driving of these new supercars Gen 3s that were announced. They'll go into effect for 2023, which includes the new Chevrolet Camaro, replacing, pretty much phasing out the Holden ZB Commodores, ending a long-time era in Australian racing. Ford, of course, will continue on with their Mustang. It's going to look a little bit like NASCAR in a way with the next-gen cars, how they handle themselves. A lot of cross advice in terms of information being shared. But if one thing's for sure, history likes to repeat itself at Bathurst and likes to be defined. And we got a little bit of everything. We got a record broken. We have and kind of on track. Yeah, those little porcupine animals that literally brought out a safety car. An albino kangaroo nearly making its way over onto the track. That's no stranger. That's a sight no stranger to any Australian racing fan in Mount Panorama. And we got a beautiful Holden victory between two well-decorated, liked drivers, Chaz Mostert, Lee Holdsworth. Let's talk about the drivers. Chaz Mostert led 106 laps. So Chaz Mostert, Lee Holdsworth led 106 laps. Started on pole, record-breaking pole time, by the way. A lap time of 123.3736 seconds. That's 203.3, a new record for qualifying in the top 10 shootout. Brilliant stuff. Led 106 laps. And as for Chaz Mostert, his 16th career win. As for Lee Holdsworth, his fourth career win in supercars. And for the Bathurst 1000, it's the first win for Chaz Mostert. In a Holden, his second win total, and the first ever Bathurst 1000 win for Lee Holdsworth. And, of course, that was perhaps, like, that race just came down to pit stops. Even a mistake. They had, looked like from the onboard, when it happened live, their tire blew, and it blew in a way, like coming down the exit of the chase into the final corner, where it sounded like the engine was ill and pretty much dying out. I thought that's what happened. That's what Mark Skate said. Mark Skate was quick and said, "It's over," and I mean, everyone felt it. And then we realized that there was a flat tire entering the pits and got it replaced and recovered from that impromptu pit stop. Used a few safety cars to the advantage of the two drivers. And guess what? It worked. It worked so well. Give the credit to Lee Holdsworth as well as a co-driver. Did brilliant out there. But in terms of the statistical history of this win, it's the 8th win for Walkinshaw and Andretti United. Their first win in 10 years at Bathurst. It took them a decade and some rebranding in the process to do it. Holden's 35th win, of course, as we know, it's their penultimate Bathurst 1000 for 2023. One more outing for the brand, and then they phase out to Chevrolet in the Camaro. So the ZB Commodore gets credit for another win back-to-back for Holden. Remember last year we had Shane Van Gisbergen give Holden the 34th win in the Great Race. And Mostert, of course, fun fact, Mostert had 106 laps. But if you combine the two wins that he's won at Bathurst, no hand sanitizer left. If you combine the two wins that Chaz Mostert has had at Bathurst, he led a total of combined 107 laps, because that first one, he only led the final lap. Remember that frantic finish with Jamie Whincup and Paul Dumbrell. And, of course, Chaz had Paul Morris in that victory as a co-driver. And now he gets to bring another veteran to Bathurst victory in Lee Holdsworth. And that was fun to watch. And by the way, for Holdsworth, that's his first win since Winton of 2014. Yeah, it's been that long. Great sight to see. Walkinshaw and Andretti United, a team that is a three-way bunch between decorated racing owners, Ryan Walkinshaw, of course, Ryan Walkinshaw, being from the Walkinshaw family, Richard Dean, Michael Andretti, perhaps one of the greatest American names to be recognized in racing, and Zach Brown from McLaren and United Autosports. And, they've only been with Holdens this whole time. Just outstanding. And how they put it together to win that race, what they needed to do, those pit stops, all in all, it was worthwhile. And in fact, I can pull up on the timing here. The race took 6 hours and 15 minutes and 6 seconds to complete. That was 14 minutes? No, 15 minutes. That's 15 minutes longer than the record-breaking 2018 race duration, which was 6 hours and a minute, which I think it was pretty cool. Session statistics, we had 6 safety cars for a total of 13 laps. And total time of the safety car being on track, 1 hour, 2 minutes, and 0.5. So 62 minutes and 5 seconds behind the safety car. Very interesting to watch. 5 hours, 12 minutes under green flag conditions. All cars except for one finished with over 100 laps in their count, which that's impressive. And what I find even more impressive is that we had 18 cars on the lead lap, more than half the field, finish on the same lap as the winner. If that's not competitive, I don't know what is. And usually Bathurst would narrow down to 1 or 2 teams. But it looked like anyone could have won it. Second place in the race for the second year in a row was Chaz won the race. Cam Waters and James Moffitt. Now, those drivers led for a combination of 22 laps, started third, and Tickford Racing's Ford Mustang, boy, they were shy of glory. It's going to sit for a long time. It's a kind of loss that you lose sleep over when you thought you had something to the first place guys and just couldn't get to them. Moffitt and Waters get their best career finish at Bathurst for the second time in a row. Well done to them. Still nice to see them on the podium. And how about Brody Kostecki and David Russell, third place finishers for Eurobus Motorsport, of course, the team that pulled off the upset in 2017 with Reynolds and Yolden. Career best finish for both drivers in that effort. They stay in the fight and recovered from a bit of an unjust penalty after the top 10 shootout when I guess they had illegal door weight for the Eurobus Motorsport team in both cars. That included the sister car that was driven by Nick Percat and Dale Wood. So that's your podium for Bathurst this year. Fourth place went to Jamie Whincup and Craig Lowndes. They started 11th, and of course, this was an emotional farewell race for Jamie Whincup's full-time Supercars career. Statistically, the greatest driver ever in the history of Supercars competition. And of course, how fitting he does it with Craig Lowndes and brings it forth. It would have been nice if they won, but can't complain. In 526 races. And since the dawn of his career in 2002, Jamie Whincup scored 124 wins, 226 podiums, 92 pole positions, and of course, 7 championships with the Triple Eight Race Engineering, all Triple Eight. And of course, how can we forget the 4 Bathurst 1000 wins? the Bathurst 12 hours. You name it, he's done it. By the way, all of his wins were with Triple Eight Race Engineering, and since the dawn of his time with Triple Eight in 06, he's really never looked back. It's been amazing to see what they've done, essentially, from Ford to Holden, and just incredible that he still got it to bring it home second in the points. And that's why Wayne Cup is perhaps the greatest of all time, or at least for his generation. And I'm glad that I was able to enjoy parts of it. It reminds me a lot about, it gives me a lot of reminders of Jimmy Johnson in NASCAR. I'll just tell you like that. 5th place, Bryce Fullwood and Warren Luff. And of course, we know Warren Luff has been trying so hard to get that Bathurst win, the sister car to the winner, Walkinshaw Radio United. They led 1 lap and started back in 12th. Best finish for Bryce Fullwood in the great race. As I mentioned, Nick Percat and Dale Wood finished in 6th. They started 7th. 7th place went to James Courtney and Thomas Randall. Both drivers did very well for Tickford Racing, and nice to see Thomas Randall's doing well. They started 16th. 8th place went to Brad Jones Racing, number 14, Dean Fiore, Todd Hazelwood. Career best for Hazelwood and career best for Hazelwood in this race. 9th place, the Ford underdogs of Tim Blanchard Racing. Of course, he put out Tim Steele for the duration of the season. They finished 9th, best finish in Bathurst for Blanchard. And 10th place, the Davison brothers for Dick Johnson Racing and Ford. Will and Alex Davison. Will Davison fell shy of his 3rd win at Bathurst, just didn't have the best car out there. So that's your top 10. Let's look at the finishers outside the top 10 in the Repco Bathurst 1000, which was 64th running of the great race. 11th place went to the 2017 winning duo, but first time they did it in Joe for Kelly Grove Racing. David Reynolds, Luke Yulden led for 4 laps. They started 19th, brought home 11th. This was the last race in Supercars for Kelly family ownership. Remember Kelly Racing, Rick and Todd Kelly. They're giving full ownership away to the Grove, the Grove operation. So there's that, and that was an emotional farewell from the paddock for sure. Just like Roland Dane and Triple Eight, the Dane name is so synonymous with success in supercars. 12th place, good run for Macaulay Jones and Chris Pither, the 96 Coca-Cola Commodore for Brad Jones Racing. Macaulay Jones started in 22nd in his qualifying bid. Chris Pither doing very decent as a co-driver as well. 13th place, we have the Kostecki brothers, Jake and Kirk Kostecki for Matt Stone Racing. And they started back in 21st position in a Holden. Both drivers got their best finishes in Bathurst history, so they climb the ladder here. Gary Jacobson, Dylan O'Keefe, Jack LeBrock, and Zach Best. Good drive by Zach Best, especially in the start of the race when they put him in the car. That takes bravery to start a race here at Bathurst, and he did very well for his debut at Tickford Racing. Mark Winterbottom and Michael Caruso led a lap and started 14th. They finished 16th. Jack Smith, David Wall for Brad Jones Racing and Holden finished 17th, started 23rd. And boy, this was gutting, but gutting for the champion to finish out like this, trying to defend his Bathurst win. Shane Van Giesbergen and Garth Tanner for Triple Eight Race Engineering. They started 7th, led for 26 laps, but of course, a tire going down in the closing laps meant they had to settle for 18th. But then again, great job on Van Giesbergen's second championship. two more drivers finished, or two more pairings finished this race. Fabian Coulthard, Jonathan Webb for Team Sydney, the Techno team, 5 laps down. First car off the lead lap, started 20th. Will Brown, Jack Perkins, fortunately for them, they never really recovered from their grid penalty. They started in 9th, but of course got shuffled back. First retirement, non-classified, was Matt Campbell, the Porsche factory driver, and Andre Heimgartner for Kelly Grove Racing. The pair led a lap and started 17th, but they were not classified. This was the gutting retirement, but beautiful to see these two race, especially how about Russell Engel, the veteran who's been racing for years at Bathurst, came back at age 57 to pair up with Brock Feeney in a wild card third entry for Triple Eight Race Engineering in Holden. They had a super cheap auto livery on the car. We got to see really the youngster and the old veteran, the enforcer, and Russell Engel, of course, being the two-time Bathurst 1000 champion he is, and the 2005 Supercar champion he is. Just shows you how awesome, just how sensational of a driver he's been. He's been racing for so long. In fact, Brock Feeney was bringing that car up the ladder. They were in a good position for maybe a top 5 at the end, until a little mistake by Brock Feeney going up the hill wasn't enough to end the race early. And as for Russell Engel, it was his first start since the Gold Coast 600 in 2016. Fun fact, I'll give you a crazy fact, show you how long Russell Engel's been racing. So, of course, his first Bathurst 1000 debut was back in 1990. He drove a Holden Commodore VLSS Group A SV for Bob Forbes Motorsport in 1990. Brought home 17th. His co-driver, believe it or not, it was Kevin Bartlett. Kevin Bartlett, one of the best domestic single-seater drivers in his time, now 81 years old, was just closing out his career around that same age as Russell Engel made his, start, kind of like Brock Feeney did in 1990, like a torch, like a handing of the torch. And to think, just to consider that he was in one of the first ever, Bartlett was in one of the first ever races in Bathurst in the 1963 race. It was his first ever start. Shows you how the generations change. His last race he was driving with, Russell Engel, right? And Russell Engel, that was his first race. And how old was Russell Engel in that race? Well, do the math. He was just about 27 years old, 26, 27 years old. And now he shared the car with Brock Feeney. That's just a big stat to note. That's pretty cool. Next on the retirement board, we had Anton Deposqual and Tony D'Alberto. Unfortunately, for those two drivers, they started second. It was a good run. Looked like they had a car to win, but a broken drive line was enough to take them out on lap 139. Second to last on the list was the Matt Stone Racing Holden, number 35, driven by Zane Goddard and Jaden Ojeda. The car was in a crash on lap 113. That crash was suffered by Jaden Ojeda. He walked away okay. And the only car that did not complete triple-digit number of laps retired on lap 6. That was the Team 18, number 20, the DeWalt Holden of Scott Pye and James Golding. James Golding had a power steering failure that resulted in several mishaps on his way limping back to the pits. Lasted them 6 laps. So with all that out of the way, honestly, this was a great Bathurst 1000 to watch. I enjoyed every moment of this race. Um, it was a classic, and just Bathurst never disappoints. Well, I mean, it looks like a great track place too. I want to be there one day. Just gives you that honest vibe. I got Sebring vibes from this past November when I saw the atmosphere over there. But of course, with the higher magnitude being the big race it is. And in the end, Shane Van Gisbergen and Triple Eight Race Engineering win the respective championships. Shane Van Gisbergen taking home his second career championship. He won his first in 2016. A brilliant, just an unbelievable start to the season he had. What more can you say? 29-30 points he has earned. Second place, of course, bidding farewell to full-time supercar racing. Jamie Whincup in second. Whincup earned 27-19 points. Third place with 24-94 points. Chaz Moster with that Bathurst win leaps up to third. That's very impressive at the end. It took a while for him to get used to the Waukesha and Andretti United camp, but he's finally got the stride. And this Bathurst win ensures that. Will Davison in fourth. He's going to have to wait another year to get back to victory lane. It's been now over 5 years, but a successful points run to put himself in the top five, 23.89 points, his final score. And fifth place, Cameron Waters. He's going to lead the season scratching his head after finishing second at Bathurst for the second year in a row, 23.69 points. That was a close battle for fourth, but Davison eked him out at 10th place run at Bathurst. Sixth place went to Anton Deposqual in the final points. Seventh place, Nick Percat. Eighth place, Will Brown. Keep an eye on Will Brown. He's very, very talented. Just look back at how well he's done it during those 4 weekends at Sydney. Brody Kostecki, just like his Yerbis teammate, another driver you have to look at for the long-term future. And Frosty brings it out in the top 10. Mark Witterbottom doing what he does best, being consistent in this season. Final standings for the teams. The teams championship. Top five, of course, Triple Eight Race Engineering win their 10th championship. Final score of 56.49 points. Dick Johnson Racing in their first year after their time with Team Penske's partnership. That, this is like first time since 2013 that they're out there without Team Penske again. Not bad at all. They have a good future ahead with their drivers, 64 points, but still a long ways to get back at Triple Eight for next year. Third place was the second highest for team, Tickford Racing, 16 points. Fourth place, Waukesha Andretti United, 39.85 points. And fifth place, Yerbis Motorsports with that hard charging run to the end of this season. It's good enough for fifth, 36.26 points. The side championship for Sydney was won by Shane Van Gisbergen over the course of the 4 weeks. This year's manufacturers championship go to Holden Commodore ZB. Win that with ease. As far as the companion series, Super 2 championship won by Brock Feeney, Triple Eight Race Engineering, and a Holden VF Commodore. Super 3 championship was won by young Nash Morris, the son of Paul Morris, for Nemo Racing, the family-owned team, and the Ford FG Falcon. And the Super Ute Series was won by Aaron Borg, driving for SRT in a Toyota Hilux. Honestly, another year in the books for supercars. To be honest, did I like it? I think I liked it. I would have liked it more if we didn't have barriers getting the teams to the track. Hopefully by next year, the cobwebs will finally be cleared. Aside from that, we had great racing. Passionate driving from start to finish. The super sprints were fun to watch. Can't wait to see the Enduro Cup come back next year, where we get to see, the crown jewel races with the co-drivers return. I would like to see Gold Coast be back at its 600-kilometer distance for Surfers Paradise. That would be nice to see, but we'll have to find that out in the long term. Hopefully they can get back to Pukekohe for the Auckland, New Zealand rounds that's sorely missed. And, of course, the Australian Grand Prix weekend, that mecca weekend of motor racing at Albert Park in Melbourne. Why F1 wants to propose a street circuit in Sydney, I have no idea. Just hopefully one day we can get back to Adelaide. That being removed from the calendar next year, that's a tough pill to swallow. Aside from that, great racing all around. Congratulations to Shane Giesberg and Triple Eight. Holden, happy retirement to Roland Dane. Wish him and his daughter Jess all the best. I mean, they're great people for supercars, and especially for their time at Triple Eight Race Engineering, the mecca of teams like the Hendrick Motorsports of Australia, basically. Coming from a NASCAR fan, but yeah. 13 rounds confirmed for next year. That I'll discuss in another podcast because we have to move on. I know it's been a long episode, but we have to break things down. Next up was another big event, one that comes around every week after Thanksgiving in the chilly panhandle of Florida. Yes, the rare parts of Central Time Florida. It actually snows here every year, part of Florida. The Snowball Derby. And Chandler Smith, factory Toyota driver in NASCAR, set to drive for Kyle Busch Motorsports next year in the Truck Series, delivers himself and Toyota the win in the 54th Snowball Derby. He only had to lead the last 16 laps to do it. People say it was controversial. Kind of moved Derek Thorne out of the way. Well, guess what? That's what you have to do to win these races. He wanted it badly. He had to fight for it, and that's what he had to do to get the win. And I think even Derek Thorne knew that, which was kind of impressive considering that he led 280 plus laps. But you have to lead at lap 300 to win the Snowball Derby. And for the second year in a row, from pole position, he falls just shy. Poor guy. Derek Thorne in second. Third place went to Cole Butcher. Kind of had the cleanest looking car out there, to be honest, after all that was said and done. But to be fair, I mean, you have to test the grill at the end of these races to win. Fourth place, Ryan Preece. Usually you see him in the modified cars in New England, but he did pretty well down south in the full-bodied late models. Fifth place, Sammy Smith. Sixth place went to Hunter Robbins. His bid to become for Hunter Robbins and Johanna Long to become the first ever husband and wife to win this race. Falls 6 positions shy. Seventh place went to Carson Hocevar. Great short track driver in the making with a NASCAR career on the horizon. Steven Nasse. Man, this guy falls shy again. Remember, he physically won the race in 2019, but had to give the trophy to second place Travis Braden after post-race tech inspection went south hours after. Corey Heim, 9th, and Eric Jones, the bid to become the first 3-time winner outside of the name Rich Bickle, falls short. Eric Jones, not a bad run for himself. I'm a little surprised to see Ty Majeski struggle. I mean, 11th place is actually bad in his language, to be honest. But he just didn't really have the best car. It was not cooperative at all. Casey Johnson in 12th. Bubba Pollard, 13th. Brendan Watson and Casey Roderick rounded out the top 15. Jace Hansen, Derek Griffith, Jake Finch, Grant Enfinger, and Derek Krause rounded out the top 20. Cody Connor, Luke Fenhouse, Caden Honeycutt, Jeff Storm, Mason Diaz, Matt Craig, Jeremy Doss, Preston Peltier, Jake Garcia, and Dan Fredrickson rounded out the top 30. 5-time winner Rich Bickle in his farewell tour. Luckily, was able to be there at the checkered flag in his final Snowball Derby, despite being in an accident earlier in the race. Gets credited with 31st place finish. Daniel Dye in 32nd. Mike Garvey, the Pensacola native, in 33rd. Jesse Love in 34th, the two-time defending West Series champion. Jet Nolan in 35th. Jeff Choquette, 36th, and Kyle Platt, poor guy, never really got a chance to see how his race would have gone because his car failed on lap 4, credited with last place 37th. Overall, it was a very interesting race. I mean, it's on you to determine whether or not Chandler Smith's move is dirty. I'm not going to do the talking. Go watch the replay. I'm going to be honest. It's short track racing. What do you expect? It's the Derby. He said it in the interview on the spot. That's what you expect in this racing. This is what's expected to win. If you want to win, you have to do things you may not be comfortable doing. Your audacity level may have to change to win these races, and that's what Chandler Smith's mindset was. Really a good effort on him to finally win this race. Now let's talk about the companion races. Of course, most notably the Snowflake 100 held on Saturday with late models. Derek Thorne won that in dominating fashion. Hopefully he doesn't forget that one. I know it's going to be easy to forget it considering what happened yesterday, but still an impressive run there. The Outlaws were won by Connor Kresick. Modifieds won by Cody Stickler. The Pro Truck race was a frantic one. Glad to see all drivers okay from that crash entering turn 1. Gavin Graham was given the win in that race. In the Sportsman showing, that was Brandon Fowler who took the win, and the Pure Stock race was won by Robert Loper. So that was what happened in Pensacola, Florida. It was a very interesting race filled with different dynamics of driving habits, drivers, and emotions alike. And I'm just glad we got to see the entry list increase again. I know a lot of teams or drivers from outside of America were not able to get back here. Now they had the chance that they finally could do it, and they're here. We had a lot of controversies. Johanna Long Robbins wasn't happy at all with how she was raced at the Snowflake 100. People did debate. Now we got a debate live about drivers with money coming into these short track races, tearing up the track, making it a recreational activity in relation to those who have to, work from paycheck to paycheck just to put a car together and even think about coming to Pensacola for this race. This is what short track racing is. The haves and the have-nots. And we saw it on display this weekend, and we've seen careers born at this event. We've seen careers change at this event. And honestly, this year was no different. Chandler Smith drove his heart out. He was determined and executed a brilliant drive in the closing laps of the race. He knew what he had to do to get to Derek Thorne, or there would be no Snowball Derby win for Chandler Smith. And Chandler Smith did just that. All right. Now, we're going to get into the very interesting stuff of this podcast. Let's bring up the only events that we have to cover this weekend. Obvious one. Formula One. The final curtain call of the 2021 Formula One World Championship. Is it the Yas Marina circuit? Beautiful Yas Marina, Abu Dhabi, in the UAE. It's the final race of the World Championship. The Abu Dhabi Grand Prix has been on the map since 2009. It's actually, it was the first ever race to start in the day and finish at night. And just want to throw that out. The Yas Marina circuit has underwent a few changes this year. including turn 5 and the removals of turn 6 and 7. Will that impact the championship? I know Max Verstappen may not have been favored, especially now, considering what happened last year when he never looked back and won that race. It's a Telco track, say what you want, but it's a beautiful facility. It's like top notch, VIP room, pay thousands of dollars to even think about going in a VIP box. I don't know. I'm not here to teach dynamics of Formula One politics. I'm here to talk about the racing, and I know there might be politics in this, but sit back and enjoy it. Wake up early, get your breakfast, and put the TV on for the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix. I think it's Fly Emirates, the sponsor this year. No, it's Etihad Airways. Take that back. They are level on points. But who has been successful here at the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix? The Abu Dhabi Grand Prix, the history of this race, well, first of all, it was won for the first time in 2009 by Sebastian Vettel. Last year, Max Verstappen won. They both drove Red Bulls, ironically. Who has the most wins? Well, if you're a Hamilton fan, you might like this. He's got 5 wins here, more than any other driver. Sebastian Vettel is the only other driver to have multiple wins besides Hamilton, 3 wins. Then these drivers with 1 win, because of the complexity of this race, I'll add every stat in here. 1 win from Kimi Räikkönen, 1 win from Nico Rosberg, 1 win from Valtteri Bottas, and 1 win from Max Verstappen. And that's the kicker. Max Verstappen has succeeded here before. And I know a few corners of this monstrosity of a racetrack changed, but it's still a telling stat. He's won this race last year. Now, the most wins from a constructor, Mercedes, of course, 6 wins. So, Hamilton fan, that's going to be some good statistics. Red Bull, 4 wins. Of course, 3 wins from Vettel, and then the 4th from Verstappen. McLaren and Lotus shared 1 win each. That one, McLaren, came from Lewis Hamilton. So, now you have the stats. I'm just going to be upfront. I'm going to give you my prediction real fast. So I was thinking, over this last night, who would be the better driver? All you need to do is pull up racingreference.info. Use that as your tool. Right-click on Max Verstappen and Lewis Hamilton if you look at the race results. And then go look at the 2021 graph on the bottom on racingreference.info. So here we go. Max Verstappen this year, 21 races. 9 wins, 17 podiums, 9 poles. 651 of the 1,153 laps were led by Max Verstappen. He scored 378 points this year. Average start, 3.0. Average finish, 4.3. He's ran at the finish 18 times, and all of them, of course, in the lead lap. All that's the obvious easy stuff. And then we look at Lewis Hamilton. 36 years old, almost 37. This year, 8 wins. He's in 21 races, 8 wins, 16 podiums, 5 poles. In the 1,211 laps that he's ran, he's led only 246 of them. He's picked up 370 points. Well, 369.5 to be exact. Average start, 3.1. Average finish, 3.5. He's been running at the finish 20 times. And on the lead lap, of course, in all of them. But, so, I mean, we're talking decimals and comparisons. These two are so close, like, in relation to each other. Neck and neck. Who would be this world champion? Just from this year alone. Forget what led up to this year. All you need, if you're Max Verstappen or Lewis Hamilton, is to be the better driver amongst the two, be in the points, and you are the world champion. The highest driver in the points in relation to the other driver is the title. It's winner take all. This wasn't manufactured. This wasn't put in a system or it guarantees that. No. This happened over the course of 21 Grand Prix. Race by race. And I know I'm firm on this. You've heard me not like the NASCAR playoff system before. I'm just saying, look how natural that was. I mean, the fact that it happened like it did this year just shows how amazing these two drivers are. Just naturally talented. You put them in the best cars, and this is where we're at. It's an emotional season of attrition for everybody involved: driver, team, mechanic, principals, you name it. This year started with a lot of barriers in terms of getting around, and a few races without fans, and now every race has packed stands, and they're here to see it all unfold. I'm going to be honest. I think you're going to have to win this race to win the world championship. There's no two ways about it. You can't mitigate any hope on your end or have a teammate be in the way. Okay. I think I have my prediction. Forget this race. Your 2021 Formula One world champion will be Max Verstappen. Why Max Verstappen? He has all the pieces put together to win the world championship. He's an executor. He keeps his word. This is what he's been ready for. It took years to develop this driver who started so young in his career. I think this is the time that Max is going to shine. I think it's going to be Max Verstappen. Now, it might not be. It very likely could go the other way very quickly. But again, it's going to come down to the checkered flag at the end of this race. All you got to do is finish higher than your opponent. Listen, whoever wins this championship will deserve it to the highest degree. This is the kind of season we're having. And I know, going back to 2007, 2008, 2012, we could go back to 16, we could go back to 2006, we can go back to 1994, 97, we could go back to 89, 76, 74. Every year presents different scenarios in Formula One. Formula One is a fluid sport. Things don't stay the same. It's always a constant change. This year, we happen to find ourselves in perhaps one of the greatest championship battles of all time. So cherish it. Enjoy the race. And may the best one win, honestly. It's going to be a race of the ages. We're going to be back here 5, 10, 15, 20 years looking back at this specific race. I hope it goes well. I hope the stewards get their hands off the driver seriously. And may the best one win. Now, Formula 2 does have one more weekend as well as part of the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix weekend. And it looks like the championship is all but finished for the field. No one can really reach Oscar Piastri. It's a crying shame he doesn't have a ride in Formula One. He's more than ready and fit to have it, but that's for another discussion. Piastri is ready to clinch it in these next 3 races. The only reason why he doesn't have the trophy is because of the half-point situation from Jeddah, but in the end, enjoy this last weekend of racing. 2021 is the calendar year. It's really coming to an end in terms of racing in this weekend in specific. And I want to thank all my viewers and everybody that watches the Below the Yellow Line podcast on a weekly basis for coming in, and especially for this one being in the afternoon. I have finals. I have to go. So you guys enjoy the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix and to see how this year's frantic championship fight is going to come down to, whether it goes to Hamilton or Verstappen, whether the constructors go to Mercedes or Red Bull. It's all going to be put on before us on TV, or if you're somehow luckily there, it's going to be awesome. I think we're going to have to get a movie made, like, the Rush movie from 2013 between Lauda and Hunt in the 76 season. We're going to need that for 2021, definitely in the future. Can Sunday come fast enough? And also, I hope that my paper can be done as quick as possible, because I feel like there's no life between Wednesday and the rest of the time. But until I turn it in, that's what's up. So thank you for listening to episode 140 of the Below the Yellow Line podcast. For me, the host, I'm Joel A. Palance, signing off. Have a good one.